Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, a quiet place for long, steady narration designed to slow the night and ease the mind. Here, stories unfold at an unhurried pace, where moments linger, thoughts grow softer, and the hours gently lose their shape. There's nothing to rush, and nothing to hold on to. Just a calm voice, a steady rhythm, and a night that moves forward on its own. If these stories bring you comfort and help make the nights feel easier, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It's the best way to ensure more calm nights are always waiting for you here. Now, settle in and let the story carry the rest of the way. The responsibility does not arrive suddenly. It is not announced, and it does not feel important at first. It settles in quietly, like weight added gradually, so gradually that it is almost unnoticed. The animals are already inside the enclosure when the evening begins. They move slowly, one after another, responding to habit rather than instruction. There is no resistance. They know this place. They have been here many times before. The man stands just outside the gate and watches them enter. He does not rush them. There is no reason to. Each animal moves at its own pace, stopping occasionally, then continuing again. Hooves press into the ground and lift away. The sound is familiar. When the last one passes through, the man closes the gate carefully. He checks the latch twice, not because it looks weak, but because checking is part of the routine. The latch holds. It always does. He begins to count. He does not count quickly. He counts slowly, with pauses between numbers, allowing each animal to move into view before including it. Some stand closer together. Others remain apart. The count requires attention. The number is correct. He does not relax. Instead, he shifts his position slightly and counts again, starting from the other side of the enclosure. The animals have not moved much. A few turn their heads. One steps aside. The number remains the same. He nods, not in satisfaction, but in acknowledgement. The responsibility has begun. There is nothing written down. No one will check his work later. No record will be made. If something goes wrong, there will be no proof of when it happened, only the fact that it did. He places the lantern on a low post near the enclosure. The light is modest. It does not eliminate everything. It is not meant to. It only marks a small area as visible. Beyond it, the night waits. He adjusts the lantern slightly, turning it so the light falls inward rather than outward. This is not to see better, but to keep the surrounding darkness undisturbed. Darkness hides nothing. It simply exists. The man removes his coat and sets it nearby, folded once, then unfolded and placed again. He is not sure where it should be. He chooses a spot and leaves it there. The animals settle gradually. Some lower themselves to the ground. Others remain standing for a while, shifting weight from one leg to another. Breathing slows. The enclosure grows quieter. He listens. At first, he listens for changes, a sudden movement, a sound that does not belong. But there is nothing unusual, only the steady presence of living bodies nearby. The ground beneath him is cool. He chooses where to stand carefully, avoiding uneven places. He will be here for a long time. Comfort matters, but not enough to distract from attention. He leans against the fence briefly, then straightens again. Leaning feels too relaxed. He wants to remain alert, even if nothing requires it yet. The sky above has darkened further. The last traces of daylight have disappeared. There is no visible line between ground and sky now, only shapes and darker shapes. He looks at the enclosure again. Everything is in place. The animals breathe. Occasionally, one exhales more forcefully than the others. Another shifts slightly. These sounds mean nothing. They are expected. He tells himself this without speaking. The responsibility does not involve action. It involves presence. If something happens, he will respond. Until then, he waits. He walks the length of the enclosure slowly, keeping the lantern behind him. He does not want the light to move too much. Movement draws attention, even when nothing is there to notice. At the far end, he stops and looks back. The animals are still visible in outlines. Some faces catch the light briefly, then fade again. He counts again. The number is correct. He does not feel relief. The absence of a problem does not remove responsibility. It only confirms that the responsibility remains. He returns to his original position and sits down on a low wooden crate. It creaks slightly under his weight. He adjusts until the sound stops. Sitting does not mean resting. It means waiting from a lower position. The lantern flickers once, then steadies. He watches it for a moment longer than necessary, then looks away. Time passes, though there is no clear indication of how much. Without a clock, time is felt rather than measured. It stretches unevenly, sometimes seeming still, sometimes moving faster than expected. He listens again. There is a sound farther away, not near the enclosure, somewhere beyond it. He does not react immediately. Sounds travel strangely at night. Distance is difficult to judge. He waits. The sound does not repeat. He remains seated. The animals do not react. This is important. If they remain calm, he remains still. Another period of quiet follows, longer this time. He shifts his position slightly, careful not to make noise. His legs feel stiff already. He flexes his fingers once, then leaves them still. The responsibility grows heavier, not because anything has happened, but because nothing has. When there is action, attention narrows. When there is none, attention spreads outward, searching for reasons. He counts again, this time without standing. He traces the animals with his eyes, one by one, using shape and position rather than movement. The number remains correct. He breathes out slowly. The night deepens. Somewhere, wind moves through grass. It does not reach the enclosure directly, but its presence is felt. The lantern flame responds faintly. He watches the animals settle more fully now. Most are lying down. One remains standing longer than the others. This is not unusual. Still, he notices. Eventually, it lowers itself as well. Nothing has changed. The responsibility remains. He sits, alert but unmoving, as the night continues to gather around the small island of light. The enclosure, the animals, the fence, and the man exist together in this moment, held in place by nothing more than attention. The night has only begun. The man does not think of what he is doing as preparation at first. It feels more like adjustment, a series of small changes made without a clear end in mind. The night has begun, but it has not yet settled into itself. This is the uncertain part, when everything still feels unfinished. He stands up from the crate and walks slowly along the fence again. His steps are careful, placed deliberately so the ground does not betray him with unexpected noise. The animals remain calm, but he does not assume they will stay that way. At the far end of the enclosure, he checks the fence line with his hands rather than his eyes. Wood can be deceptive in low light. A gap that looks solid may not be. He presses gently against each post. None move. he does not trust that entirely. He returns to the gate and checks the latch again. It is still secure. He lifts it slightly and lets it fall back into place, listening to the sound it makes. The sound is familiar. It has not changed. He listens to it again in his memory, comparing it to how it usually sounds. There is no difference. Still, he remains there a moment longer than necessary. The lantern casts its small circle of light. He adjusts it again, raising it slightly so the light spreads a little farther along the ground. The shadows shift. He watches them closely until they stop moving. The animals react only faintly. One lifts its head, then lowers it again. Another exhales sharply. These reactions mean nothing, but they are noted. He decides where he will stay for the next few hours. Not where he wants to be, but where he needs to be. A place with a clear view of the enclosure, the gate, and the space beyond. He tests 2 positions, standing in each briefly before choosing the second. The first place feels too exposed. The second feels slightly more contained. He moves the crate to the chosen spot. The sound of wood against ground feels louder than it should. He pauses afterward, waiting to see if anything responds. Nothing does. He sits again, this time facing the enclosure at an angle rather than directly. It allows him to see more without turning his head. He has learned this through experience, not instruction. He pulls his coat closer around him. The temperature has dropped more quickly than he expected. It is not cold yet, but it will be. He looks toward the animals again. They are quieter now. Most are fully settled. Their shapes are lower, more compact. Only a few heads remain raised. He counts again. The number is correct. This time, however, the count takes longer. One animal is partially obscured by another. He waits for it to move, but it does not. He shifts his position slightly until he can see enough of it to include it in the count. He feels a small release of tension when the count is complete. He does not allow himself to enjoy it. The responsibility continues. He listens more carefully now. Not for specific sounds, but for changes in the pattern of sound. Silence itself has texture at night. It is not uniform. It breathes. There is a faint rustling farther away, beyond the enclosure. It is not close. It does not repeat. He does not stand. He does not turn his head quickly. He lets the sound exist and then fade. He decides to prepare for the possibility of movement. Not action, just movement. He places a short stick within reach. It is not a weapon. It is only something solid, something familiar to hold if he needs to stand suddenly. He positions it carefully so it will not roll. He does not tell himself why he does this. The lantern flame flickers again. He cups one hand around it briefly, shielding it from a faint current of air. The flame steadies. He removes his hand slowly, watching to make sure it does not flare. The night feels heavier now. The space beyond the lantern feels closer, pressing inward. He reminds himself that this is perception, not reality. Still, perception matters. He shifts his weight on the crate, finding a position that can be held for a long time. His back straightens. His feet are planted firmly. He tests the position by remaining still for several breaths. It will do. Time stretches again. Without a clock, he cannot tell how long he has been sitting. It feels longer than it is, or perhaps shorter. The uncertainty itself becomes something to manage. The animals breathe steadily. One coughs softly, then settles again. This sound is normal. He has heard it many times before. He resists the urge to stand and check anyway. He knows that too much movement creates its own problems. Noise invites attention. Attention invites reaction. Reaction invites mistakes. Waiting is safer. Another sound comes, closer this time. A brief scuffing noise, like something brushing against the ground. It stops almost immediately. He listens. The animals do not react. This is important. He remains seated, though every part of him feels ready to rise. His hand rests lightly on the stick beside him. He does not grip it. Seconds pass, perhaps minutes. There is no repetition. He exhales slowly. He realizes his breathing has become shallow. He corrects it deliberately, drawing a deeper breath and letting it out slowly. Calm is not automatic. It must be maintained. The night settles further. The sky above is completely dark now. No remaining light marks the horizon. Everything exists within the same depthless shade. He looks toward the area beyond the enclosure again. Nothing is visible, but visibility is no longer the point. Presence is. He adjusts the lantern one last time, lowering it slightly so it does not draw attention from too far away. The light becomes more contained. The enclosure remains visible enough. He commits to staying in this position. The preparation is complete, though it does not feel finished. It never will. The long part of the night lies ahead, unmarked and unmoving. He accepts this, not with confidence, but with resignation. He counts once more, not because he needs to, but because counting reminds him that everything is still where it should be. The number is correct. He sits quietly, alert and still, as the night deepens and the responsibility settles fully into place. Nothing has happened, and because nothing has happened, he remains awake. The darkness does not arrive all at once. It thickens gradually, like something poured slowly into the air, filling spaces that light had been quietly occupying without resistance. At first, the man believes nothing has changed. Then he realizes he can no longer see the far edge of the enclosure clearly. The posts that once marked its boundary have softened into shapes rather than objects. He does not adjust the lantern. He allows the change to happen. The animals respond before he does, not by moving, but by becoming still in a different way. Their breathing slows further. The small, restless movements from earlier fade. The enclosure takes on a heavier quiet, one that feels settled rather than empty. The man sits upright, hands resting loosely on his knees. He does not shift his weight. He has already chosen his position. Changing it now would feel like admitting that something is wrong. He looks toward the animals again, but the act of looking has changed. Earlier, he looked to confirm presence. Now he looks to confirm absence. Absence of movement, absence of disruption, absence of anything that would require him to act. The lantern light holds its ground stubbornly. It does not grow stronger, but it does not retreat either. It creates a small, contained space where the rules remain the same. Beyond it, the night has its own order. He listens. At first, it is easy to name the sounds. Breathing, fabric shifting slightly as he adjusts his coat, a distant rustle of grass somewhere beyond the enclosure. Each sound has a place. Then the naming becomes harder. A sound occurs that could be many things.
It is brief and unrepeatable. He does not label it. He lets it exist without explanation. Naming creates urgency, and urgency creates movement. He has learned that not every sound needs to be understood. He remains still. The darkness presses closer, not physically, but perceptually. The space between objects feels reduced, even though it is not. This is the night's effect. It removes distance without moving anything. He notices that his eyes are working harder now. They strain for detail that no longer exists. He relaxes them deliberately, letting his vision soften. Sharp focus is unnecessary. Awareness matters more. He counts again. This time he must rely on memory as much as sight. He traces the positions he remembers, confirming each shape by outline rather than detail. One animal is partially hidden behind another, but he knows where it should be. He waits until it shifts slightly before including it. The number is correct.
He feels a small tightening in his chest loosen, but only slightly. He becomes aware of time passing in a different way. Earlier, time moved in stretches. Now it moves in pulses, brief moments of awareness separated by longer periods of stillness. He does not fight this. Fighting would require effort. The cold arrives quietly. It does not announce itself. It simply becomes noticeable. His hands feel it first. He tucks them closer to his body, not to warm them, but to keep them from becoming stiff. He considers standing, just for a moment, to stretch his legs. He decides against it. Standing would break the pattern. The pattern is important. The animals remain calm. This calms him, but it does not remove the sense of vigilance. Calm animals do not mean safety. They mean only that nothing has disturbed them yet. He listens again. The sound of his own breathing feels louder now. He slows it deliberately. Inhale. Exhale. He measures it not by count, but by feel. Another sound occurs. This one is closer, but softer. A shifting of weight. A hoof adjusting position. The animal settles again. He allows himself to look directly at the source this time. The animal's outline is barely visible. It lowers its head and becomes still. Nothing else follows. The darkness continues to deepen, though he knows it cannot deepen much more. At some point, darkness reaches its limit. The night has reached that point now. He notices that his thoughts have changed. Earlier, they were practical, positioning, checking, preparing. Now they drift toward possibility, not fear, but imagination. The mind fills gaps when vision cannot. He corrects this by focusing on what is known. The fence is intact. He checked it. The gate is secure. He checked it twice. The animals are present. He has counted them repeatedly. These facts are enough. He places his hand near the stick again, not because he expects to use it, but because its presence is reassuring. It is a solid thing in a world that has become less defined. The lantern flickers once more. This time, he does not look at it immediately. He waits to see if the animals react. They do not. Only then does he glance at the flame. It steadies quickly. He does not intervene. The night feels longer now, not because more time has passed, but because there is less variation. Earlier, changes marked progress. Now, stillness dominates. He wonders briefly how many hours remain. He does not try to calculate. Without reference, calculation would be meaningless. Another sound, farther away. It might be wind, it might be something else. It does not approach. It fades. He remains seated. His body begins to register fatigue in small ways, a heaviness behind the eyes, a slight ache in his lower back. He adjusts his posture just enough to ease it, then returns to stillness. He understands now that this is the core of the responsibility, not action, not reaction, but sustained attention without reward. The animals breathe steadily. One sighs, a long exhale that seems almost human. He notes it and moves on. The darkness has fully taken over. There is no longer a visible boundary between enclosure and surroundings. The lantern's light defines the only known space. He accepts this. Another long period passes. He cannot say how long. His awareness drifts slightly, then returns. Each time it returns, he checks the same things: animals, gate, fence, darkness. Everything remains unchanged. He feels a brief urge to stand and walk, to prove to himself that he is still active, still in control. He resists it. Control does not require movement. He remains. At some point, he realizes that he has stopped expecting anything to happen. This realization is unsettling. Expectation keeps attention sharp. Without it, fatigue becomes dangerous. He deliberately reintroduces expectation, not of danger, but of responsibility. He reminds himself why he is here. He sits a little straighter. He counts again. The number is correct. The night continues to hold its shape. Darkness, animals, enclosure, lantern, man. Nothing enters, nothing leaves. This is the way it must be. He listens, watches, and waits as the night settles completely around him, sealing the world into a smaller, quieter version of itself. The darkness has taken over. And still, nothing has happened. The sound does not announce itself clearly. At first, the man is unsure whether it exists at all. It arrives softly, indistinct, blending too easily with the night to be trusted. He does not react immediately. Reacting too quickly would give the sound more importance than it deserves. He remains seated. Then it comes again. This time, there is no doubt. It is still quiet, still brief, but it is closer than before. Not close enough to locate precisely, but close enough to be acknowledged. It does not repeat in the same way. It does not form a pattern. This is what unsettles him most. He does not turn his head. He does not shift his body. He lets his attention widen instead, listening without focusing too narrowly. Narrow focus creates panic. Wide focus allows control. The animals respond before he does, not with movement, but with awareness. One of them lifts its head. Another stops breathing for just a moment, then exhales slowly. A third shifts its weight, hooves scraping softly against the ground. The enclosure is no longer fully still. The man feels the fear arrive as a physical sensation before it becomes a thought. A tightening in his chest, a slight hollow feeling beneath his ribs. His hands grow colder, not from the air, but from the sudden redirection of blood. He acknowledges the fear silently. Fear does not mean danger. Fear means uncertainty. He remains seated. The sound does not return immediately. This makes it worse. Repetition would allow explanation. Silence leaves too much space. He listens harder now, though he tries not to show it. His breathing becomes quieter, almost cautious. He feels the urge to lean forward to see better, but he resists it. Leaning would make him visible,
even if nothing is there to see him. The lantern light feels suddenly insufficient. It does not reach far enough. It does not protect anything beyond itself. He has always known this, but now the knowledge feels heavier. Another sound. This one is clearer. It is not loud, it does not rush, it does not break anything. It is simply present, a slow movement through grass or dirt just beyond the enclosure, close enough to imagine shape, but not close enough to confirm it. The man's fear sharpens. He thinks, briefly, of standing.
He does not. Standing would mean commitment. It would mean choosing action without knowing what action is required. Sitting allows him to wait. Waiting allows the situation to define itself. The animals remain unsettled but controlled. None stand fully. None flee. This matters. If they were afraid, he would already be moving. He places his hand firmly on the stick beside him. He grips it now, not tightly, but enough to feel its shape and weight. It is familiar. It is real. It grounds him. He tells himself what he knows. The fence is intact. The gate is secure. The animals are present. The sound has not entered the enclosure. These facts exist regardless of fear. The sound stops again. This is worse than if it continued. Silence invites imagination. The mind fills the gap with possibilities that vision cannot confirm. He becomes aware of how little he can see beyond the lantern's reach. The darkness feels layered now, not uniform. He swallows. His mouth is dry. He forces himself to breathe more slowly. Panic would make noise. Noise would invite response. Response would escalate something that may not exist. Another sound, this one farther away. Relief arrives briefly, sharp and unwelcome. Relief weakens attention. He does not allow himself to settle into it. The animals begin to relax slightly. Heads lower. Breathing steadies. This should reassure him. It does not. Fear does not follow logic. It follows uncertainty. He wonders what he would do if the sound returned closer than before. He does not plan. Planning would mean imagining outcomes, and imagining outcomes would pull him away from the present. He listens instead. Time stretches. Each moment feels longer than the last. His awareness narrows and widens repeatedly, like breathing. Listen. Wait. Listen again. Then it happens. The sound returns, unmistakably closer. It is slow, deliberate, not hurried. It moves parallel to the enclosure, not toward it. This detail matters, but it does not remove fear. His heart beats harder now. He feels it in his chest, in his throat. He keeps his body still through sheer effort. The animals react more clearly this time. One stands. Another turns fully toward the sound. A third moves closer to the center of the enclosure. The man's fear peaks. This is the moment where action becomes possible. He stands. The movement feels loud, though it is not. His legs feel unsteady for a second, then firm. He holds the stick properly now, not raised, not threatening, just ready. He does not step forward. He listens. The sound stops. The animals freeze. Nothing moves. The night feels suspended, as if waiting for a decision. He realizes then that the fear is not only about what might be outside the enclosure. It is about him, about whether he will choose correctly. He remains standing. Seconds pass, or minutes. He cannot tell. His fear does not disappear. It settles into something denser, more controlled, a readiness without motion. Then, slowly, the animals relax. One lowers itself again. Another turns away. Breathing resumes its earlier rhythm. The man waits longer than necessary before sitting back down. He does not rush the return to stillness. He sits carefully, deliberately, placing the stick back beside him rather than across his knees. He wants to show himself that the moment has passed. The sound does not return. The darkness resumes its earlier shape. The lantern flickers gently, unchanged. He realizes his hands are trembling slightly. He presses them together until the sensation fades. Fear leaves residue. He remains awake, more alert than before. The night has changed now. It is no longer empty. It is proven that it can intrude without explanation. This knowledge weighs on him. He counts again. The number is correct. He counts once more, slower this time, confirming not just presence but calm. Everything remains where it should be. Nothing happened, but something almost did. He sits with this understanding as the night continues, darker and heavier than before. His fear now a quiet companion rather than a passing visitor. The responsibility has deepened, and he remains awake. The night does not return to normal. It pretends to, but the man knows better. Once fear has passed through a place, it changes the way everything feels afterward. The enclosure looks the same. The animals are calm again. The lantern burns steadily. Yet something has shifted, subtle but persistent. He remains seated longer than before, allowing the moment to settle. Standing too quickly would feel like retreat. Sitting too comfortably would feel careless. He chooses neither. His hands rest on his knees. They feel steady now, though he remembers the tremor from moments earlier. He does not test them again. Testing would only confirm what he already knows, that fear leaves traces. The animals breathe slowly. One stretches its legs before lying down again. Another turns its head and presses its nose briefly into the ground. These movements are ordinary. They do not signal danger. Still, the man does not relax. He decides to count again. This time, he stands before beginning. Counting from a seated position no longer feels sufficient. He wants a clearer view, even if clarity is limited by darkness. He rises slowly, allowing his legs to adjust. The cold makes itself known again, sharper now that his body has been still. He steps closer to the enclosure, stopping just short of the fence. He does not touch it. Touching would mean reassurance, and he is not ready to accept reassurance yet. He begins the count carefully. He does not rush through familiar shapes. He pauses at each animal, confirming position, posture, and breathing. Some are easier to see than others. Those closer to the lantern appear solid and certain. Those farther away require memory as much as sight. Halfway through the count, he stops. Something feels wrong. Not missing, not altered, just different. He does not immediately identify what it is. He scans the enclosure again, slower this time, retracing his steps mentally. The animals are all present. Their spacing is slightly different, but that happens naturally as they settle. He completes the count. The number is correct. This should be enough. It is not. He counts again. this time starting from the opposite side. He changes the order deliberately, hoping the difference will reveal whatever his mind is searching for. The count remains correct. He stands there longer than necessary after finishing, watching the animals in silence. He waits for the feeling of wrongness to fade. It does not. He becomes aware that his attention has sharpened to an uncomfortable degree. Every small sound feels amplified. Every minor movement demands interpretation. This level of awareness is unsustainable. He knows this. Still, he does not sit down yet. He takes one slow step along the fence, then another. He keeps his movements minimal. He does not want to disturb the animals or draw attention to himself. As he walks, he notices how the enclosure looks different from this angle. Shadows fall in new places. Gaps between bodies appear larger or smaller. The fence posts cast uneven lines across the ground. Perspective matters more at night. He stops walking and stands still again. The feeling remains. He counts a third time. This time, one animal moves before he reaches it. It shifts its weight, then stands briefly as if disturbed by his presence. His heart tightens again, quick and sharp. He waits. The animal lowers itself back down. The count finishes correctly. He exhales, slow and controlled. He realizes then that the problem is not the animals, it is his expectation. After fear, the mind wants confirmation that the danger is gone. Counting provides numbers, but not certainty. He returns to the crate and sits again. The act of sitting feels heavier now. His body is more aware of fatigue. His shoulders ache faintly. His lower back protests. He shifts once, then stills. The lantern's light feels smaller than before, as if the darkness has claimed more ground. He resists the urge to adjust it again. Too much light would invite attention. Too little would invite imagination. Balance matters. He listens again, but now listening feels different. Earlier, listening was passive. Now it is active, almost aggressive. His ears search rather than receive. He notices how tiring this is. Time passes slowly. The night stretches ahead, and the longest part has not yet begun. The thought settles heavily in his mind. He has already faced fear, and there is still so much night left. He wonders briefly whether fear might return. The thought itself is unsettling. He presses his lips together and focuses on the enclosure again. The animals remain calm. Their breathing creates a soft, uneven rhythm. He lets this rhythm anchor his attention. The feeling of wrongness fades slightly, then returns. He counts again. This time, the count is slower than all the others. He pauses between each animal, letting his attention settle fully before moving on. He wants certainty, even if certainty is impossible. The number is correct. He allows himself a brief moment of relief. It is small, controlled, and temporary. He does not trust relief yet. He notices that one animal has shifted closer to another, pressing against it lightly. The movement is subtle, but it suggests a lingering awareness of disturbance. Animals remember more than they show. This knowledge adds weight to his responsibility. He adjusts his posture, straightening slightly. Fatigue presses against him now, more insistently. His eyes feel heavy. He blinks slowly, deliberately, to keep them focused. The lantern flickers again, briefly. His heart reacts before his mind does. He forces himself to remain still. The flame steadies. He almost laughs at himself, but stops. Laughter would feel out of place here. The night does not invite it. He looks up at the sky briefly, though he cannot see much. No stars are visible from here, only darkness layered upon darkness. He wonders, briefly, whether anyone else is awake at this hour, watching something in the same way. The thought does not comfort him, it simply exists. He returns his attention to the enclosure. The animals breathe. The fence stands. The gate remains closed. Nothing has changed, and yet everything feels different. He understands now that this is what the night does. It erodes certainty, not through action, but through time. The longer nothing happens, the more effort it takes to believe that nothing will. He counts once more. The number is correct. He settles back into stillness, carrying the weight of doubt alongside responsibility. Fear has passed, but vigilance remains, sharper and more exhausting than before. The night continues. Nothing happens, and he stays awake, counting not just animals, but moments, breaths, and the slow passage of time itself. Fatigue does not announce itself clearly. It arrives quietly, without urgency, slipping in through the smallest openings in attention. The man does not notice it at first. He mistakes it for stillness, for the calm that follows fear once nothing further has happened. He remains seated on the crate, posture upright, eyes fixed on the enclosure. The lantern burns steadily. The animals are calm. Everything appears unchanged. And yet, something is different. His eyes feel heavier than before, not painfully so, just enough to require effort. Blinking takes longer. Each time his eyes close, even briefly, reopening them feels deliberate rather than automatic. He notices this and straightens slightly. The cold has deepened. It settles into his joints now, no longer a surface discomfort, but something heavier, something that slows movement. His fingers feel stiff. He flexes them once, carefully, then leaves them still. He tells himself that this is expected. Fatigue always comes. It is not a sign that something is wrong. It is simply the body responding to time. Still, he does not like it. The animals breathe steadily. Their calm should reassure him. Instead, it sharpens the contrast between their rest and his wakefulness. They are allowed to sleep. He is not. He shifts his weight slightly on the crate, searching for a position that eases the tension in his back without relaxing him too much. Comfort is dangerous. Discomfort keeps him alert, but too much discomfort dulls the senses. Balance matters. His head dips forward slightly before he notices. It is not a full movement, just a momentary loss of tension in his neck. He lifts his head again at once, heart beating a little faster. He does not let his eyes close this time. The fear that follows is different from before. Earlier, fear came from outside, from sound, from darkness, from uncertainty. This fear comes from within. It is quieter, but more persistent. If he sleeps, something could happen. He does not define what that something is. Defining it would give it shape, and shape would give it power. The idea alone is enough. He breathes in slowly through his nose and out through his mouth. He counts the breaths without numbers, measuring them by the rise and fall of his chest. The lantern light flickers once, then steadies. He watches it closely, not because he expects it to fail, but because watching keeps his eyes open. His thoughts begin to drift in unfamiliar ways, not toward memory or imagination, but toward fragments, half-formed ideas that do not connect to one another.
This is a warning sign. His mind is loosening its grip. He responds by counting again. This time, the count feels more difficult, not because the animals have moved, but because focusing requires effort. He traces each shape slowly, confirming position and presence. The number is correct. Relief comes, but it is muted. Fatigue dulls even reassurance. He feels a brief pull toward closing his eyes, just for a moment. The idea arrives gently, almost kindly, a suggestion rather than a command. Just a second, it seems to say, nothing will change. He rejects it immediately. He stands up. The movement feels heavier than before. His legs protest, stiff from sitting. He waits until the feeling passes, then straightens fully. Standing helps. It shifts the weight of his body, wakes different muscles, sharpens his awareness. He remains standing longer than necessary, letting the cold air press against him. It is unpleasant, but effective. The animals stir slightly at the movement. One lifts its head, then settles again. Their trust in the night feels undeserved. He walks a few slow steps along the fence, then stops. He does not want to pace. Pacing wastes energy and creates patterns. Patterns lead to repetition, and repetition leads to inattention. He returns to the crate and sits again, more carefully this time. Fatigue presses harder now. His eyes sting faintly. He blinks more often. Each blink feels like a small risk. He presses his tongue against the roof of his mouth, a simple physical action that keeps him present. He focuses on the sensation, then releases it. Minutes pass, or perhaps longer. The night feels endless now. Earlier, it was heavy. Now it is long. Length is harder to endure than weight. He realizes that he has stopped listening actively. Sounds reach him, but they no longer demand interpretation. This worries him. Passive listening is the first step towards sleep. He forces himself to listen again. Wind moves faintly through the grass. The sound is distant and uneven. He tracks it for a while, following its rise and fall. It helps, briefly. Then his thoughts slip again. He thinks of nothing in particular. His mind drifts, not toward images, but toward softness. This frightens him more than the earlier sounds did. He presses his hands together firmly until the sensation becomes uncomfortable. Pain, even mild pain, sharpens attention. The animals breathe. The enclosure remains intact. The gate stands closed. He repeats these facts silently, like anchors. Another wave of fatigue arrives, heavier than the last. His head tilts forward again, this time farther. He catches himself just before his chin reaches his chest. His heart races. This was closer. He stands again at once, ignoring the stiffness in his legs. He remains standing, even though sitting would be easier. Ease is no longer the goal. He takes a few slow steps, careful not to disturb the animals. He positions himself where the lantern light falls more directly on his face. Light helps. It demands wakefulness. He stays there, eyes open, breathing steady, until the urge to sleep loosens its grip slightly. When he sits again, he does so with intention. Back straight, feet planted firmly. He places the stick across his knees this time, not to use it,
but to create a barrier. If his body relaxes too much, the stick will fall, and the sound will wake him. This is a compromise. Not ideal, but necessary. Time stretches again. The fear of sleep does not fade. It settles in, becoming part of the night's texture. He understands now that this fear will remain with him until dawn. It will ebb and flow, but it will not leave. He accepts this. Acceptance does not make it easier, it makes it manageable. His eyes close briefly once more, no longer than a breath. The stick shifts slightly on his knees. The sound is soft, but enough. His eyes open immediately. He adjusts the stick and remains still, heart beating steadily again. He feels older in this moment than he did earlier. Fatigue ages the body quickly. It strips away excess energy, leaving only what is necessary. He watches the animals again. Their rest seems deeper now. They are fully surrendered to sleep. He envies them, but not enough to resent them. Their safety depends on his wakefulness. This thought sharpens him again, just enough. The night continues. Nothing happens. And still, he remains awake. Not because he wants to, but because he must. The night enters a different phase without warning. There is no clear moment when it begins, no sign that marks the transition. The man realizes it only after some time has passed and nothing has changed. The fear from earlier has dulled. Fatigue remains. What replaces them is something heavier and harder to define. Endurance. He sits on the crate, the stick still resting across his knees, and stares into the enclosure. The animals remain asleep, their bodies arranged in familiar shapes that no longer require counting. He knows where each one is without looking closely. Familiarity replaces precision. This is dangerous. Precision keeps him awake. Familiarity invites drifting. He straightens slightly, adjusting his posture again. His body resists the movement. Muscles that were tense earlier have loosened into something closer to stiffness. Each adjustment feels slower than the last. The lantern burns steadily, unchanged for what feels like a very long time. He finds himself watching it without thinking, eyes following the small movements of the flame. This too is dangerous. The flame hypnotizes if watched too long. He forces himself to look away. The darkness beyond the lantern no longer feels threatening. It feels endless. This is worse in a different way. Threat demands attention. Endless sameness dulls it. He listens. The sounds of the night have settled into a pattern so consistent that it becomes difficult to notice when they are present at all. Wind moves occasionally. Grass shifts. The animals breathe. These sounds overlap and repeat, forming a background that no longer signals information. He realizes that he has stopped waiting for something to happen. This thought unsettles him. Waiting implies alertness. Its absence implies surrender. He adjusts the stick across his knees again, testing its balance. It wobbles slightly, then settles. The small movement produces a faint sound. He listens for a reaction. The animals do not stir. The sound disappears into the night. Time stretches in a way that feels unnatural. Without markers, minutes lose their shape. He cannot tell whether he has been sitting this way for half an hour or twice that. The uncertainty becomes a presence of its own. He wonders briefly what time it might be. The thought leads nowhere. Without a clock, time is a guess, and guessing is pointless. He lets the question go. His mind begins to wander in shallow loops. Not memories, not plans, just fragments. A fence post, the sound from earlier, the feeling of cold in his fingers. Each fragment appears, lingers briefly, then dissolves. This drifting worries him more than fear did. He presses his heels into the ground, feeling the firmness beneath them. He focuses on the sensation until his awareness sharpens slightly. The animals shift subtly, one at a time, as if responding to a shared signal. A leg stretches, a head lifts and lowers, a body presses closer to another. None of these movements indicate danger. Still, he watches them carefully. He considers counting again, then decides against it. Counting now would feel mechanical, a habit rather than a tool. He needs engagement, not routine. Instead, he chooses one animal and watches it closely. He notes the rise and fall of its flank. He matches his breathing to it, slow and steady. This helps for a while. The cold deepens again. It no longer feels sharp. It feels settled, as if it has always been there. His toes are numb now. He wiggles them slightly inside his boots, then stops. Too much movement invites stiffness. His hands rest loosely on his thighs. He resists the urge to tuck them under his arms. That would feel too much like rest. The lantern flickers faintly, then steadies. He barely reacts. The earlier fear has drained away, leaving behind a dull acceptance. This acceptance is dangerous in its own way. He realizes that if something were to happen now, it would take longer for him to respond. The thought sharpens his awareness again, briefly. He stands. Standing feels heavier than before. His legs protest. He waits until the sensation passes, then straightens fully. He remains standing, looking over the enclosure, forcing his eyes to adjust to the darkness again. From this height, the animals look smaller, more distant. The lantern light feels even more limited. He resists the urge to move it. He takes 3 slow steps along the fence, then stops. He does not pace further. Movement for its own sake wastes energy. He sits again, carefully. The stick remains across his knees. The long middle hours stretch on. At some point, he becomes aware that his thoughts have slowed. Not quieted, slowed. Each thought arrives more slowly, lingers longer, then leaves. This makes effort feel heavier. He blinks slowly. The stick shifts slightly. He stiffens at once, alert again. Nothing else moves. His heart settles back into its earlier rhythm. He realizes then that he is no longer fighting sleep in bursts. He is resisting it continuously, like holding a door closed against steady pressure. This requires constant effort, not sharp reactions. The animals remain asleep. The enclosure holds. The night remains unchanged. He thinks briefly of dawn, not as relief, but as inevitability. Dawn will come whether he waits for it or not. The thought comforts him slightly, then fades. Another long stretch passes. He adjusts his posture again, this time more carefully. His back aches. His neck is stiff. He rolls his shoulders once, slowly, then stills. The lantern light seems dimmer now, though he knows it has not changed. His eyes are tired, not the flame. He rubs them briefly with the heels of his hands, then lowers them again. Darkness presses closer for a moment, then recedes. He listens again. The night offers nothing new. This is the true test of the watch, not fear, not sound, but monotony. He feels his awareness thinning at the edges, like fabric worn too long. He tightens it deliberately, focusing again on what is real and immediate. Fence, gate, animals, lantern,
ground beneath his feet. These things exist. Everything else can wait. Another moment of near drift arrives. His head tilts slightly. The stick shifts. He corrects it at once. He wonders briefly whether this is what everyone experiences in the middle of the night when they are meant to be asleep. Perhaps the body expects this surrender. Perhaps resistance always feels unnatural. The thought passes. He does not allow philosophy to take hold. Philosophy softens attention. The animals breathe. The enclosure remains unchanged. The night continues to stretch, smooth and unbroken. He stays awake through effort alone, not because he expects something to happen, but because the responsibility demands presence regardless of expectation. Nothing happens, and still the night continues.
The change is so slight that the man does not trust it at first. Nothing obvious announces it. The darkness does not lift. The cold does not ease. The animals remain asleep, and yet something in the night has shifted its weight, as if pressure has been redistributed rather than removed. He notices it not with his eyes, but with his body. The constant effort it has taken to stay awake begins to change. The fatigue is still there, heavy and unyielding, but it no longer presses forward quite as aggressively. Instead of coming in waves, it settles into a steady presence, something to carry rather than fight. This is unfamiliar. He remains seated on the crate, the stick still across his knees, though he no longer needs it as urgently. It stays there out of habit now, a symbol of vigilance rather than a tool. His eyes remain open without quite as much effort. Blinking still takes intention, but it no longer feels like a struggle each time. He does not trust this improvement. Night has offered false comfort before. He listens again. The sounds have changed slightly. Not louder, not fewer, just different in spacing. Wind moves less frequently now. The grass settles more completely. The night feels quieter, but not empty. The animals breathe deeply, their rest uninterrupted. One shifts, pressing closer to another, then stills. The movement feels heavier, more settled than before. Sleep has claimed them fully. He envies them less now. Earlier, their sleep felt like abandonment. Now it feels earned. He straightens slightly, rolling his shoulders once, careful not to make noise. His muscles ache in a dull, persistent way. The ache is no longer sharp. It has become background, like the cold. This, too, feels like a change. Time begins to behave differently. The endless stretch of the middle hours has passed, though he cannot say exactly when. The moments now feel marginally shorter, easier to endure one by one. He does not count animals again. He does not need to. Their presence feels certain in a way it did not earlier. Certainty has returned, quietly and without explanation. He focuses instead on the enclosure as a whole. Fence, gate, ground, shapes. Everything remains intact. The lantern burns steadily, its flames smaller than before, but consistent. He considers adjusting it, then decides against it. Change is unnecessary. He becomes aware of a faint lightening of the darkness above. Not brightness, but thinning. The sky does not reveal itself, but it feels less dense, as if it has taken a shallow breath. He does not look directly upward. He has learned that expectation distorts perception. Still, the feeling remains. His thoughts slow again, but this time without danger. They drift without pulling him toward sleep. He feels present in his body again, even as fatigue weighs on him. He shifts his feet slightly, testing sensation. The numbness has receded a little. He can feel the ground more clearly now. Another subtle change. The night no longer feels endless. It still stretches, but it now has direction. He sits quietly, breathing evenly, no longer fighting each breath. His fear has faded almost completely, replaced by a cautious patience. He remains alert, but the sharp edge of vigilance has softened. He understands now that this is not weakness, it is adaptation. The animals stir again, but this time the movement feels different. Not reaction, not disturbance, just adjustment. One lifts its head briefly, then lowers it again without hesitation. He watches closely. Nothing follows. The cold remains, but it no longer deepens. It feels stable, as if it has reached its limit. This too reassures him. He notices that his jaw has been clenched for some time. He releases it deliberately, letting his mouth relax. The sensation feels strange, as if he has forgotten how to let go. The stick across his knees shifts slightly as he moves. He steadies it, then considers removing it entirely. He decides to leave it in place. Habit has its own comfort. The night continues to hold, but less tightly. He listens again, not because he expects something to happen, but because listening is part of being awake. Sounds reach him, pass through him, and fade without demanding response. This feels new. He realizes that his fear of sleep has also changed. Earlier, sleep felt like danger. Now it feels like something approaching from a distance, inevitable but not immediate. He does not allow himself to sleep. Not yet. He remains seated, posture relaxed but intentional, eyes open and steady. His breathing has found a rhythm that no longer requires monitoring. Time passes. The darkness thins a little more, imperceptibly. The horizon remains hidden, but the world feels less sealed. The night has begun to release its grip. He thinks briefly of dawn again. This time the thought feels neutral rather than hopeful. Dawn is not rescue, it is simply the next condition. He accepts this. Another long stretch passes, but it does not feel as heavy. He remains awake without forcing himself quite as much. His body, having endured the worst, has adjusted. The animals breathe. The enclosure holds. The lantern burns. Everything remains as it should be. He realizes then that the hardest part of the night is over, not because the night has ended, but because he has learned how to exist within it. This understanding brings no joy, only steadiness. He stays awake, calm now rather than strained, waiting not for something to happen, but for time itself to move forward. Nothing happens, and for the first time in hours, that feels acceptable. The first sign of morning does not look like light. It feels like space. The darkness no longer presses inward as it did before. It loosens, subtly, as if the night has taken a half step back. The man notices it in the way his breath moves more freely, in the way his shoulders no longer feel drawn up against the cold. He does not trust this feeling at first. Night has misled him before. He remains seated on the crate, posture upright but no longer rigid. The stick still rests across his knees, though its purpose has faded. It remains out of habit now, part of the shape of the night rather than a defense against it. The animals sleep deeply. Their breathing is slower than before, heavier, as if the night has pulled them into its deepest hold just as it begins to weaken elsewhere. One of them shifts slightly, then settles again without lifting its head. He watches closely. Nothing follows. The lantern burns low now, its flame smaller but steady. He notices that the light feels warmer than before, less harsh against the surrounding darkness. Or perhaps his eyes have changed. Fatigue alters perception as much as light does. He listens. The night sounds are fewer now. Not gone, but spaced farther apart. Wind moves less often. The grass is quieter. Even the distant, indistinct noises that once filled the silence have receded. The quiet feels different. Earlier, silence felt like absence, something missing that might return suddenly. Now it feels like completion, as if the night has said what it needed to say and is waiting for something else to begin. He straightens slightly and rolls his neck once, slowly. The movement feels easier than it did earlier. His muscles still ache, but the ache no longer demands attention. It exists, but it does not dominate. He becomes aware of a faint change in the sky. Not brightness, not color, just definition. The darkness above no longer feels uniform. There is depth to it now, layers rather than a single mass. He does not stare upward. He knows better than to look for light that is not yet there. Still, the awareness remains. Time behaves differently again. The long, featureless stretch of the middle hours has passed. Now, moments feel like they are moving towards something, even if that something has not yet arrived. He allows himself to think of dawn again, not as relief, not as reward, just as an ending. The responsibility still holds. He knows this. Until the animals rise, until the enclosure stirs, until the day announces itself clearly, his role does not change. He does not relax fully. But the effort required to remain awake has changed. He is no longer fighting sleep at every moment. The danger of slipping under has receded. Fatigue remains, but it no longer pulls him downward. It rests alongside him instead. He breathes evenly. He notices his hands again. They no longer tremble. The cold has settled into them without sharpness. He flexes his fingers once, then rests them again. The animals breathe. The enclosure holds. Everything remains intact. A bird calls somewhere far away. The sound is brief and distant, but unmistakable. He freezes. This sound is different from the others. It does not belong to the night. It belongs to what comes after. He waits. The call does not repeat immediately. It is not a chorus. It is only one voice, tentative, testing the edge of morning. His heart responds before his thoughts do, quickening slightly, not with fear, but with alertness of a different kind. He remains still. Another call comes, farther away this time. It is faint, but clear enough to confirm what the first suggested. Morning is approaching. He does not move. This moment is fragile. The boundary between night and day is not abrupt. It stretches, uncertain and quiet. He does not want to disturb it. The animals remain asleep, unaware of the shift. Their rest feels deeper now, as if the last hold of the night has settled fully upon them. He watches. The lantern flickers once, then steadies. He considers extinguishing it, then decides against it. The lantern has been part of the night. It will remain until the night is fully gone. The sky lightens almost imperceptibly. Not enough to change the ground, not enough to define shapes clearly, but enough to soften the darkness further. Edges begin to separate slightly from one another. Fence posts that were once only suggested now have form again. He notices this with quiet satisfaction. His body responds as well. The ache in his back shifts. The stiffness in his legs loosens a little. He remains seated, but the urge to stand feels less desperate now, more natural. He counts again. This time, the count feels different. He does not struggle to see. He does not rely as heavily on memory. Shapes are clearer. Positions are more distinct. The number is correct. He feels relief, but it is muted and practical. Relief does not require celebration. It simply allows the next step. Another bird calls, then another. The sounds do not overlap yet. They appear singly, cautiously, as if the morning itself is unsure whether it has permission to arrive. The man remains quiet. He becomes aware of how tired he truly is now. The exhaustion that had been held back by effort and fear begins to surface more honestly. His eyelids feel heavy again, but this time without danger. Sleep no longer threatens responsibility. The responsibility is nearly complete. He does not allow himself to sleep. Not yet. He shifts slightly on the crate, preparing his body for movement. He does not stand yet. There is still time. The night has not fully released him. The animals begin to stir more noticeably now. One lifts its head and keeps it raised. Another stretches its legs. A third exhales sharply and adjusts position. He watches carefully. This movement feels right. Not reactive, not startled, just waking. The sky continues its slow change. The darkness thins further, revealing more detail without revealing color. The world is still mostly gray, still undefined, but no longer sealed. The lantern feels out of place now, its small circle of light competing with something larger and more patient. He waits a little longer. Another bird calls, closer this time. The sound is confident now, not tentative. He stands. The movement feels natural, not forced. His legs support him without protest. He stretches slightly, careful not to draw attention from the animals. His body responds with relief rather than resistance. He remains standing, looking over the enclosure. The animals are awake now, though not fully active. Heads are raised, bodies shift. They sense the change without understanding it. He feels something loosen inside him. The night has held him for a long time. It has demanded attention, restraint, and endurance. Now it begins to release that hold, slowly and without ceremony. He does not rush the moment. He stands quietly, breathing evenly, watching the slow return of shape and distance to the world. Nothing happened, and yet everything has changed. The night is ending. Morning arrives without ceremony. There is no clear moment when night ends and day begins. The transition happens gradually, so gradually that it feels as though the night simply loosens its grip and steps aside. The man stands near the enclosure and watches as the world resumes its shape. The sky is lighter now, though still colorless. Gray replaces black. Distance returns. The fence posts stand clearly again, their edges sharp enough to distinguish one from the next. The ground no longer feels endless. It belongs to space again, not absence. The animals are awake. They do not rise all at once. One stands slowly, stretching its legs before settling its weight. Another follows, then another. The rest remain lying down for a while longer, as if reluctant to let go of the last warmth of the night. Their movements are unhurried. Nothing startles them. The long watch has ended without incident, and they do not know it. The man remains standing,
hands resting loosely at his sides. His body feels heavy now, but in a different way than before. The strain has lifted. What remains is simple fatigue, earned, uncomplicated, and manageable. He watches the animals closely, but without the sharp focus of earlier hours. His attention no longer needs to be sharpened. Presence is enough. The lantern still burns, though its flame looks pale against the growing light. He notices this and reaches out to turn it down. The flame shrinks, then steadies at a lower glow. He does not extinguish it yet. There is no hurry. The enclosure holds. The gate remains closed. Everything is as it should be. He feels the weight of responsibility lift gradually rather than all at once. It loosens from his shoulders, not falling away, but settling into memory. He has carried it long enough. Birds call more frequently now, not loudly, not joyfully, just persistently. The sounds layer gently, spreading across the quiet morning without urgency. The animals respond in their own way. One turns its head toward the sound. Another shifts position and exhales deeply. A third steps carefully, testing the ground before moving farther. The man steps closer to the fence and rests one hand against it. The wood feels solid beneath his palm, warmer now. The cold of the night has begun to retreat. He stands there for a moment longer than necessary. Fatigue presses in fully now that vigilance is no longer required. His eyelids feel heavy again, but this time there is no danger in it. Sleep no longer threatens responsibility. It waits its turn. He stretches slowly, careful not to rush the movement. His muscles protest briefly, then loosen. He feels the stiffness in his back, the ache in his legs, the dull soreness in his shoulders. All of it feels acceptable. The animals move more freely now. Several are standing. One walks a short distance, then stops. Another lowers its head toward the ground. The world resumes its ordinary rhythm. He steps back from the fence and looks around the space beyond the enclosure. The night has withdrawn completely now, leaving behind a familiar landscape. Nothing looks different than it did before, and that is the point. Nothing happened. He considers counting again, then decides against it. The count is unnecessary now. The animals are awake. Their presence is obvious. Certainty no longer requires confirmation. The lantern flickers once more, then steadies. He reaches out and extinguishes it carefully. Smoke rises briefly, then disappears. The light of the morning takes over without resistance. He remains standing for a moment, adjusting to the change. The absence of lantern light feels strange at first. He has grown accustomed to its small circle of certainty. Without it, the world feels larger. He breathes deeply, once, then again. The animals continue their slow movements. None appear distressed, none appear restless. The enclosure has done its job. So has he. He feels no pride in this. Pride would feel unnecessary. Responsibility fulfilled does not demand recognition. It simply ends. He picks up the crate and moves it back to where it was earlier, setting it down quietly. The sound of wood against ground feels ordinary now, no longer too loud or intrusive. He retrieves his coat and slips it on slowly. The fabric feels warmer than before, or perhaps his body has changed. The stick rests where he left it. He picks it up, turns it once in his hands, then sets it aside. It has served its purpose. The morning continues to settle in. Shadows shorten slightly. The ground reveals more detail. The air smells different now, cool but not cold. He looks at the animals one last time before stepping away. They are fully awake now, moving calmly within the enclosure.
Their awareness belongs to the day. He feels a quiet finality settle inside him. The watch is over. He does not linger. He walks away at an unhurried pace, leaving the enclosure behind. The sounds of the animals fade slightly as distance grows. The bird calls remain. The world feels larger now, more open. The night has released him fully. He carries the fatigue with him, but it no longer feels heavy. It feels earned. Nothing happened. And because nothing happened, the morning arrives exactly as it should. The watch has ended.